Hi there, good evening and welcome to your Sunday night show. It's that Sunday night show here on the Four Lads Had a Dream Network. My name is Scott Paterson. If you're joining us on your Sunday night, we're really delighted to have your company. Lots to discuss. Another win for Rangers yesterday from Hampden, our tenancy as it approaches us getting kicked out, I think, to be perfectly honest with you. And we'll do a little bit about that. It's a very, very busy week for Rangers, of course. Transfer deadline day is fast approaching, and not to mention the small, very small matter of the first Old Firm of the season coming next weekend, which should be extremely exciting. Joining me, as usual, the faces of your Sunday night, Dougie Kinnear and Sheryl Ritchie. Dougie, how are you doing?
Good evening, guys. I'm very well. It's good that we've been invited back for a second podcast, Scott, after we didn't make too much of a mess of the first one. But the real question that's on my lips is, which one of us is Pat Nevin?
Exactly. So if that's a fair point. If you did miss that last week, there was someone who suggested it was good of Pat Nevin to join us on the show. I don't know if Cheryl's done something with her hair this week, but I think I can rule her out, to be perfectly honest.
Just to make sure that I'm out the running.
Sheryl, good to see you. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm brilliant, thank you. Plenty to speak about tonight. I'm much better for those couple of hours yesterday afternoon. 6 goals, a great performance, and plenty to talk about.
Yes, indeed. And listen, before we get in that, I'm very aware the Rangers have announced some transfer news tonight and outgoing, and Dougie Kinnear, Casa de Kinnear must have been like the 4th of July about 6 o'clock tonight when it was announced that Ben Davies was away on loan.
Still celebrating, to be honest. Do you know what? I think Ben Davies really sums up our transfer activity over a certain period. I think I had the rant about it last week. We came off the back of a Europa League run, and Giovanni Van Bronckhorst was gifted guys like Ben Davies to take us to the next level, which of course would have been Champions League qualification and to win the league.
Yeah.
Oh, I feel sorry for Giovanni Van Bronckhorst, but it's great to be able to get Ben Davies off the wage bill. He was a big earner, and we shouldn't have big earners that are not regular first team footballers. So delighted he's off. It's not even got an option to buy. So we're all Ben Davies fans for the next 12 months, hoping that he goes down to St Andrews, performs well, and earns a move to Birmingham. And by the way, Birmingham's a great move for him. They're in League One, granted, but they're well financed. You've seen it in the friendly match against us. They played very well. I'm hoping he goes down there, plays well, enjoys his football, and earns a move away from us.
Yeah, and do you know, it's true what you say when you refer to it being a good move for him. Obviously, one of the things that we've kind of taken advantage of, Sheryl, in the last wee while is the sort of obligation to buy. Yeah. So a player will disappear. It doesn't seem like there's anything that's been written into the contract that I understand at the end of the season. So unless he plays out his skin, you would imagine him to come back. Alexander Campbell, who's watching on YouTube, Alexander, poor if we're still paying some of his wages. It's a fair point, and you'd imagine he'd be one of the relatively big earners at the club just now, as Dougie suggests.
Yep, I think he's on, from what I can remember from the end of last season, he's just under £30,000 a week. So he is. I think he was kind of late 20s, so he is. He's earning a fair whack. And there is a slight worry about that they're not having the obligation to buy. But do you know what? If he goes down there and he does well, even at a team within his division, you know, he might stand out to somebody if he puts in decent performances. So all we can do is hope, I guess. And as Dougie says, we're all Ben Davies fans. I have to say, though, hands up, I actually thought when he came in for that Old Firm game at Parkhead, the end of last season, I actually thought he did all right. But again, it's all relative for what was around him at that point and how bad we were at that point as well. So, no, I think it's hugely important that we've at least got him away.
Do you know that way on Ben? Sorry, Dougie, on you go.
No, I was going to say one of the listeners actually made the point that I was going to make. You know, Ben Davies is actually very good at reading a game of football. He finds himself in the right place. He's good at the interceptions, and at times he looks like a good player. But the problem in Scotland is he's just not aggressive enough. You know, you need your centre back to be commanding headers, to be flying into challenges, and you've seen it in his first season. The Old Firm game at Celtic Park where we conceded the goal, and it was him that kind of went for the header but wasn't fully committed in the header. We just can't carry a centre-back that doesn't have that aggression, and hopefully when he goes to League One, for example, I don't know how physical League One is, for example, but you're hoping that he goes to a league and a team that doesn't need that side of physicality, and he looks like a good player, and then he gets that move.
Yeah. No, listen, absolutely. I actually remember when Ben Davies came up, and one of the things I thought was one of the things that makes him such maybe an attractive sort of option is the fact he's a lefty. And I think instantly when you know he's a lefty, he's going to play in the left side of the centre half. It gives you balance, and it's something that I think sort of we all sort of hang on. If you're playing two centre halves, you need to have balance. So the guy on the right hand side must only use his right foot. The guy on the left only his left foot. And I think you got that from Ben Davies, but the reliability issue and the aggression that you need in a Rangers centre half just wasn't there from him. Clearly wasn't part of his game, Dougie. I completely agree with you. We wish him best of luck down south for the next year or so. Sheryl, it's nice to be doing a podcast on a Sunday night after such an impressive afternoon at Hampden.
Absolutely. Do you know what? It was actually like watching a different team. It really was. I think particularly in the second half, they were trying things. They played with a kind of confidence that's really, really been lacking of late. They played without a fear as well. I think the biggest thing for me, and I've heard it mentioned as well, was that second goal and the timing of that second goal as well. There's so many times where we've played teams and we've gone a goal up maybe fairly early on, and then we've just, forgive me, fannied about, and it ended up costing ourselves a goal, going 1-1, and then, you know, you've seen it in the Motherwell game, that scrappy 2-1, where towards the end of the game we're all kind of living on our nerves slightly, because you do know that we do have that mistake in us as well. So I think it was brilliant. I know that Clement had talked about connections between players as well, and that was so evident yesterday. Do you know, I think it's more evident at the moment on the left-hand side between Jefte and Matondo, but even yesterday there was signs of a partnership between Tav, a sort of growing understanding between Tav and Tierney that I think will come as well. We were trying things, the fullbacks inverting, pushing up as well, and just that goal threat. You know, goals, relying on Dessers, but we weren't doing that as much. Matondo, it's funny, I watched the game again today because I had in my notes from Saturday. Matondo, plenty of the ball, but no end product. But actually, when you watch it again, no, he was everywhere. I think the first maybe half hour, he lost the ball a few times, but no, certainly, you know, an assist, a goal as well. His goal, the timing of it, absolutely brilliant. Can I be a wee bit negative?
Of course you can.
I have one, right?
Just
this one. I think it was before in his pre-match, Clement had spoke about high concentration, needing high concentration. And I think that the only thing that I would pick up from yesterday, if I was being a wee bit snippy, was that tendency to lose the ball and not win it back straight away. We did better in the second half when we were playing with a wee bit more freedom, the cushion of the goal. But I think it was actually the beginning of the first half, around about 7 minutes. Ross County broke away and there was a double save for Butland early doors. And again, I think it was the end of the first half. Barron lost the ball in the middle of the pitch. He was kind of nudged off the ball slightly. And was it Denham? Maybe ran about 50 yards unchallenged and got the shot away as well. I think in the second half, what you've seen with them was they were kind of, if they did lose the ball, winning it back a lot quicker as well. So no, I'm delighted. Much, much happier.
Dougie, Sheryl brings up something that I was going to bring up before we got into maybe the, not necessarily 6 goals individually, but particularly Sheryl, Dessers and Matondo. I think both had really, really good games. Matondo probably his best for the club, I would argue. We've often spoke about how important it is that the Rangers goalkeeper is switched on, of really good quality, because there will always be a moment at some point where you will need him. And Sheryl's right, alludes to the point that, do you know what I mean? Jack Butland makes an excellent save at nothing each. And you know, if that curves beyond him into the net, that becomes a very, very sticky afternoon for Philippe Clement and this Rangers team, and the mob, if you like, that were in and around Hampden for the afternoon.
I think that latter part's a very key point there, Scott, is the momentum could have been all lost if we conceded a goal in the first 10 minutes. You know, we obviously went on to steamroll Ross County and made them look very, very poor. If you concede a goal in the first 7 minutes, the whole atmosphere in the stadium completely changes. Yeah. And that's why at Rangers it's so important you've got a top goalkeeper. And one of the attributes of a Rangers goalkeeper has always got to be concentration. You've got to be switched on at any minute of the game, ready to stop something that can happen out of nothing. And that chance did. happen out of nothing, and it's like, do you know, it's a great save. I'm in the
really
west, right behind that, and I thought it was going in. He's done well to get the save, and done even better to get up again for it second time round. So, yeah, really important save at a key time. I agree with Sheryl's point earlier on as well around the second goal. That's the goal that killed the game. Getting that second goal was absolutely massive. But the two players that you've touched on, in terms of Matondo, Dessers, they're probably the most criticised Rangers players in our squad. Dessers got man of the match inside the ground. I believe Matondo got it from the likes of the BBC, and it was very deserving. It could have went either way. Both of them were excellent. Do you know what's interesting? Obviously, I seen a comment coming in there about Matondo in terms of the havoc that he caused on the pitch. I think the biggest challenge that we have with Matondo goes back to the same comment that's being made in the comments just now about Ben Davies. If Rabbi Matondo was earning £10,000 to £15,000 per week, he would be a fine squad player. He's a young player. Everyone would be saying he's not expected to be first choice. He's a guy that can come on, make the odd impact. We are talking about a guy that's nearly on 30 grand a week.
Yeah.
That's not an impact player. When Rangers are paying that kind of wage, you're expecting someone to be not only a jersey holder, first team pick, you're expecting them to be the star of the team. We can't keep paying these kind of wages on guys that are bit part players the way that Matondo and Davies have been. So Matondo's a real conundrum for me, because I think if you can get a wee bit more consistency from Matondo, which is the next big challenge for him, he can come in and he can give you that kind of performance. You know, the goal against Celtic last season, we need to see it more with Matondo. But for me, for Matondo to stay at this club, he needs to be doing it consistently. And for him to get a first team place, he needs to be doing it consistently. Dessers, on the other hand, is a completely different story altogether. Dessers is our most on-form player. There's a couple. Connor Barron's been brilliant. Jeffrey looks excellent as well. Sheryl Dessers is the one that we can rely on. We were chatting earlier on in the WhatsApp. There was a guy put a tweet out to say who had been scoring all the Rangers goals since January last year. It is actually scary when you look at that list. I think, what's the total? The total's something like 76 goals, and 18 of them are Sheryl Dessers. Next in line is Tavernier at 8, who's your right back and your penalty taker. That's the importance of Dessers. And I touched on it last week. We might have wanted to move Dessers on because of the player trading model. He's turning 30 soon. We want to bring in money for him, to bring in somebody younger who can play. He's a guy right now who we could arguably not lose, because he's that important to the team. He's the one who's scoring the goals. He's the most on-form player. I didn't check before I came on. I imagine he's a league top goal scorer at the moment in time. So it's a really, really difficult one with Dessers. And right now, he's silencing a lot of doubters.
Do you know, he's absolutely key for everything we're doing just now. And in every match, he's key for what we do. And I never thought for a second at the end of the last season that we would be saying Dessers would be so key to us. Interesting to hear Clement speak post-match, how he almost wished he was a little bit younger and he was having more opportunities to work alongside him, with obviously more years to maybe play with. Sheryl, one of the things that surprised me yesterday was actually Matondo starting. There was a bit of speculation around him last week. Blackburn and Leeds both meant to be sort of sniffing around, trying to enhance their team. He was someone that I think yesterday afternoon, I think there would have been guys that would have been quite happy to drive him south, to be perfectly honest with you. And I don't think we should lose sight of the fact that Ross County were really quite poor yesterday. I think that's quite fair to say. I don't think that's overly disparaging. But if Matondo continues to play like that, and whip up maybe a bit of speed and get a bit of consistency, he becomes the person that plays in there, particularly when Cortez isn't available.
I think the worry is though, Scott, and I know that Doogie touched on it, there's just no consistency with him whatsoever. And we really could be sitting here, hopefully we won't be, but we could be sitting here this time next week thinking, he's kind of reverted back to type. So again, for somebody that's and it's similar to Davies, for somebody, Doogie said, that is earning that much money, we need it every week, or we need it 3 weeks out of 4. for Matondo. And I, from what I've seen of him, he just doesn't have that level of consistency. I know he's young, but it's either the inconsistency or the injury. We don't ever get a sort of prolonged period with him where he either doesn't, his form dips massively, or he's injured. The only thing I wondered yesterday, and I know maybe Clement kind of shot it now with the comment about the outs that are going to be going out in the transfer window not coming from the squad on Saturday. I wondered if his performance yesterday maybe would have alerted another few teams that were kind of thinking about him, that would have attracted them to more. I don't know, but then Clement making that comment, it seems like he's not going to be going anywhere. So if we can get a tune, I'm seeing in the comments there that he has to start next week. Yep, if he performs like he did yesterday, absolutely. We know what he can do against Celtic. We've seen it that game at Ibrox, and he can produce things out of nothing, but then he can also produce nothing. So it's a difficult one.
Do you know that way? I think I can't remember if it was something I read or heard indeed, but I think it might have been Chris Jack that suggested it on the Rangers Review a couple of weeks ago, was when Matondo was scouted. He was largely scouted as a player of a team that didn't or weren't used to having lots and lots of the ball, but was very much impacty in the sense that if you threw him on as a sub, his pace is frightening and can really damage teams. I think you're looking at a player who's maybe came here and is just not used to having as much of the ball as what maybe he has had previously, and that maybe sounds a little bit pithy because of football, and I get that. But I do wonder if it's I don't want to say he's still getting used to things, because that sounds ridiculous. And he should be in a stage now where he is able to play and able to hurt teams. I just wonder if we're going to see that now. It'd been really interesting to see if he starts next week at Celtic Park. I personally would. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, because I am going to come to you both for your predictions and your thoughts and your feelings for next weekend, which should be quite interesting. Last thing I want to leave you with on the game yesterday, Dougie, Dujon Sterling. I'm almost sure if any of you guys pulled out tonight, I could get Big Dooge to come in and just fit in quite nicely. He just does. He'll play anywhere. It's quite obvious when Balogun goes off injured. It would have been easy for Philippe Clement to maybe throw on Leon King yesterday. But he evidently trusts Dujon Sterling to do whatever he asks.
Do you know, I sympathise a little bit with Leon King just on that subject, because at that point in the game, a wee bit later in the match, I think it would have been Leon King coming on. I've seen somebody saying earlier on that when we were 4-0 up, we should have been bringing on more youngsters. We did eventually bring on the likes of McCausland and Robbie Fraser. So we are bringing in the young players.
Yeah.
I would have liked to have seen Leon King get a chance at centre-back, because I think we destroyed his career the season when we were in the Champions League with the injuries, having to play him alongside James Sands up against teams like Liverpool. He needs to recover, and he needs to... Do you know, it wouldn't surprise me if he's a player that we loaned out to go and recover elsewhere.
Absolutely.
As for Sterling, though, Sterling being so versatile is both a blessing and a curse, right? Because he's one of these guys that at some point he's going to have to nail down a position that becomes his position, and he is then the key starter in the team every week in that role. And I think at some point very soon at Rangers it will be at right back. But until that period comes, we've got to use him as we are just now in terms of that utility player. You know, he started at central midfield. I think, and we're going to come on to it a little bit later, I think that is with one eye on next weekend. Let's see how Sterling and Connor Barron do together in the centre of the park to be more, hard to beat, to press. They're very good at that kind of intense pressing, working really hard. But see, when he stepped back, my dad turned around to me and said, have we just found Sterling's position? Because we are struggling at centre-back right now. You know, Balogun went off with the injury. Hopefully he is back. Hopefully Proper's back as well for Celtic. So you've got options there. But we are struggling at centre-back to pick who is your first choice. Sterling strolled it. But again, it comes back to the point that we made earlier on in the show around, is that because Ross County didn't offer very much?
Yes.
That, you know, when they're not creating a lot of chances in the final third, they're not causing us all sorts of problems. You're not really testing them at centre back, so you don't know if that's why he did look impressive. But it is so good to have a player like Dujon Sterling in your team who can cover a number of positions.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Listen, last couple of things I want to say on the game. Special mention to Yefte. Seems to be settling in really nicely. I thought it was really impressive yesterday. And Sheryl, you're absolutely right. Good relationships evidently being created down that left-hand side, which is really important. Lots of games to come. Tom Lawrence getting on the score sheet yesterday. Wonderful, nice wee finish again. Matondo setting him up. Sheryl, during the week we kind of got maybe an unofficial nod that we'll be back at our own place at some point in September. 21st of September looks like it could be the time. I just wonder what you think about the way that the players have adopted to maybe having to play these initial first couple of games at Ibrox, because you can see that there's spaces in around the stands for probably a variety of different reasons. People just not wanting to go to Hampden, people maybe not feeling that they can get to Hampden, and for a variety of different reasons. I wonder if you think that the players have adapted to their new surroundings for a small period of time.
Well, before we go with the players, can I just say that the Giffnick Loyal, which consists of myself and my 8-year-old son, are actually, we're pushing for a permanent move to Hampden, because 8 minutes in the car, I've got a great parking space, and I found a nice Italian as well. So I'm going to go against the grain and say I'm leading the campaign to keep us there, which I think could be a 2-person campaign, but not to worry. I think in the main, it's a bit a wider pitch at Hampden, but the players seem to have adapted to it pretty well, Scott.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not going to come out and say, oh, this is horrendous, we can't wait to get back to Ibrox. I know they will be able to for the atmosphere, etc. It's their home, but there hasn't been much grumbling about it. So I think in the main, they've adapted pretty well.
And I'm going to take a break from the football chat for now, because this has popped into the chat from Billy RFC number 1. Does anyone think Doug looks like Dougie? If it's not Pat, well, I'm assuming you were Pat Nevin from last week, by the way.
Better not be me, because Kenny's already Alan Brazil. Do you know, I can't even tell you what Jude Trump looks like. I seen it come in. I'm like, I'm going to have to Google this.
I'm genuinely not that sure either, to be perfectly honest with you. But there's no abuse being directed at me, so I'm quite happy for it to be you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Dougie, same question to you. I mean, do you think that the players have kind of taken on the role of not being? We know, everyone knows how important Ibrox is to us as a support and a fortress, etc. How do you feel that the players have sort of fitted into that interim sort of role?
First of all, I think I'm better looking than Jude Trump. I'll take that.
You've
one.
Googled it, haven't you?
I have Googled it. But do you know, like, obviously we came away with back-to-back, or 3 victories now, including the St Johnstone game at Hampden domestically. The challenge being the Dynamo Kyiv game. I think we would have had a different feel around the stadium in that game. The atmosphere does suffer when you're at Hampden, and I think particularly in that game we could have really done with Fortress Ibrox. But there's maybe a benefit from playing at Hampden, right? And maybe that benefit is a lot of these new guys, for example, have never experienced Hampden in a cup semi-final or final.
Yeah.
The likelihood is we've got an opportunity to get to one come 21st or 22nd of September when we play Dundee, hopefully at Ibrox.
Yeah.
If we get to Hampden, these guys are not, overawed by the experience, because they've now been to Hampden 4 times. Yeah. They know the stadium, they know where they're going to get changed, and all the kind of basics that sometimes you're a wee bit fearful of. They know the size of the pitch, they've played on it, they know the stadium atmosphere is very different to Ibrox. I just wonder if this actually could be a benefit for us in the long run. Now, I'm clutching at straws here, because we have had so many downsides to not playing at Ibrox, financially being one, and obviously as I touched on with Dynamo Kyiv. But yeah. I just wonder if there is a benefit somewhere in the future of playing at Hampden.
Yeah, I mean, do you know, I kind of thought earlier on, one of the things that will be nice to say, pardon me, on the pod tonight was that if that is our last game at Hampden, just past, we will see them at the semi-final stage, all things being equal. So, and I think you're absolutely right. It is a really good point. The guys will now have that experience of playing in Rangers ties, maybe high pressure ties at Hampden. It's important. It's really, really important. So fingers crossed we do get the opportunity to go back, but I do hope the next time we're there, it'll be in a semi-final in the not too distant future. Dougie, I'm going to stay with you this week. huge week. Transfer deadline day is just around the corner. I heard you on Sports Sound yesterday, post-match, speaking to Kenny Mack and Tom English and Rory Loy, and you made a really good point about Cantwell and Hadji and what we should do with them if they are still here Saturday morning. And I think the general consensus is, I agree, we should look to try and manufacture a way to use them because they're good enough and they automatically enhance the squad if they're around. Do you think they're still going to be around come the weekend?
No, I don't. I made the point around bringing them back into the fold because that was the question that was asked. It was asked around how do the supporters feel if we don't shift Hadji and Cantwell.
Yeah.
The point I made was, the quality that they've got, the wages that they're on, they can't remain in a B team for 6 months if the window closes and they're still here. But I think they're absolutely going to be gone. I can see Roddy's in there saying, don't ask me about transfers because I've had a shocker all summer. I think it's very difficult to predict Rangers transfers right now because it's dependent on who leaves.
Yeah.
So it depends on who's going to come in, and that's the issue with Cantwell and Hadji. Right now, it's the issue across the team. I think when Clement has touched on in his press conference around, it's likely only going to be the players who are not involved in the squad who exit the club. I think that's because we've not had the bids of the value of the players that are in the squad. You're looking at guys like Rabbi Matondo, like Kieran Dill, guys that were involved yesterday. Ideally, we want to move these guys on, but see if you don't get the money, you can't go and replace them with the quality that you need. So there's no point in, selling some of the guys short who are involved just now when you can't replace them. And for me, that's the key.
Do you know when you made a point, however, which I thought was really relevant, and Paul, who's a regular watcher of us, our second week, referring to maybe not taking Cantwell back into the team if he's still here. I think and I'll stay with you just now, Dougie, because I think one of the things you said yesterday was you used Dessers as a very, very, very recent example about how sort of nice for out for him for a period last season. Are we that fickle that Cantwell couldn't come back in and we could all be pals?
Well, first of all, we are a very fickle fan base. But Alexander's just made a very good comment there, which I was actually going to lead on to one of the questions that went to Rory on yesterday's episode of Sports Sound. There is a very different level of professionalism between Hadji and Cantwell, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Both players are looking to exit the club for different reasons. One of them is prepared to train and play with the B team, and the other one spat the dummy out. I think that's probably the narrative right now that a lot of supporters are a wee bit frustrated about with Cantwell, that he seems to be the one pushing for the move. He doesn't want to live in Scotland anymore. He's refusing to play for the B team, is the narrative right now. If he does come back into the fold, it will be very difficult for him to win over some supporters. But the point I made about Dessers is there is a very easy way to win over supporters, and that's to contribute on the football pitch. Dessers is so he's been treated pretty harshly from the support. He's been the whipping boy. Dessers himself has referred to it in terms of the abuse that he has received. That must be pretty tough as a footballer to get that every single time you step in the football pitch. He says he was made to feel to blame when we were losing games, and he still hadn't unpacked his furniture. That's pretty hard going. But from a Cantwell perspective, I think a lot of it's deserved. Unlike Dessers was a new guy. Cantwell brings a lot of it on himself, unfortunately. And I can see the frustration with supporters on Cantwell. But if he does come back in, he's going to have to win over supporters, and the only way you can do that is by performing on the park. Yeah,
no, absolutely, I agree. I'm sorry, Sheryl, on you go.
Yeah, do you know what? I actually think that Clement played an absolute blinder by coming out and telling everybody that, Cantwell he doesn't want to be here. Yeah. And like Dougie says, Hadji, I have no issues with. He's professional. It hasn't worked out for him. 55 season, he was absolutely brilliant, but his loan period didn't seem to work out as well as he hoped. I would welcome him back if we can. I believe it's a financial thing, so if we can work around that, if he doesn't end up leaving. I seen somewhere, I think it was yesterday or today, Rapid Bucharest are meant to be interested in him, and they wouldn't match his salary here, but I think one of their chairmen was going to bankroll it, so that might be something for him. But in terms of welcoming Cantwell back, absolutely not. We want, it's the old saying, no man is bigger than the club. And this seems to be a pattern with Todd Cantwell as well. Wherever he goes, this seems to follow him. Todd Cantwell appears to be the problem, which is clear to everybody apart from Todd Cantwell. So I wouldn't welcome him back, no. And I don't think, from what we've seen of him so far, that he has that kind of mental strength that you talked about, Dougie, with Dessers. He doesn't have that presence or that awareness that he would be able to sort of reintegrate himself to the squad and endear himself to the fans as well. So I think the only option for him is to leave.
So see, that's a great shout as well. The thing that kind of jumps out at me on it is that Cantwell would have to be reintegrated back into the fold, where everyone around knows that, all right, your teammate's desperate to get away for Rangers. He's desperate to get away by Scotland from by all accounts. And I think it would just be really difficult for him to be largely, I don't want to say accepted again, but I just think people have got, over the past 6 months or so, people have become increasingly scunnered with his nonsense, both maybe on and off the pitch a little bit. Someone in the comments, and I brought up the comment, indeed said that he was toast the minute Clement had to pull him back at the Old Firm game at the end of last season. You could argue he was toast for a bit before that, I think, to be perfectly honest with you. Sheryl, for bringing in people this week, who are we bringing in? Where are we bringing them into play? Who do we need?
Do you know what? My dream would be Lennon Miller.
Yeah.
Could you imagine a midfield that featured Lennon Miller and Connor Barron?
2 assists today, by all accounts. Played out.
I know, I didn't see it, but I heard afterwards.
Yeah.
Do you know what? Not many people have mentioned it, and we know it that we could speak about Tav for a very long time. I would still want a right back. I don't think we will bring one in. Definitely a centre back. I know you had touched on at the beginning, Scott, the rumours as well about the young centre back coming in. A 10, somebody to play the 10 as well. I know we spoke about Lawrence last week as well. He had a good game yesterday, but I still have my reservations around playing him there for 90 minutes or playing him there consistently. And again, we have an injury to Danilo. We're relying on, or we have an injury to Dessers. I think we need another number 9 as well.
Yeah, that's fair. Dougie, there's obvious areas I think you would like to improve. I think a lot of the areas you're looking to improve are dependent on how you play. And we've heard loads about needing a 10. If you're bringing in a 10, it suggests you're going to go with 2 in the centre, with 1 just messing about ahead. The alternative is, of course, you ditch the 10, you bring in someone, you go 3 across the centre of the pitch. I think he has to find someone that can maybe do both. And I think that's very, very difficult to get one player who is as effective sitting in a 3 as he is maybe being that second man behind a striker at 9.
It is, and I think to Sheryl's point and to the point in some of the comments just now, we've got to be fairly realistic here. We can't fix everything in one window.
Yeah.
The squad needs massively transformed. It needs major surgery on it. To bring in the quality that we need, you're going to have to spend money, both in transfers and in wages. Money we do not have because we didn't qualify for the next round of the Champions League. And as a result of that, I reckon from a target perspective, we would have had a list of targets here if we qualified for the Champions League.
Yeah.
Abdallah Sima, potentially, for example. And then when you don't get the Champions League, you're having to go to your targets down here. I think what was interesting around Clement's comments post-match is that he said, we will sign more than we sell, which is a different narrative to previously, which was the 1 in, 1 out. So that one surprised me. And it then made me think around, where are we going to strengthen? Ben Davies has just left. Nsiala so far is not kind of moved outside of the B team. He's not featured on the bench in any game. St Johnstone would have been the game to trial him if you think he's ready to step up at any point. So I imagine we will go in and sign a centre back. Interestingly, the link that came out this week from Fabrizio Romano, which is the man in the know of transfers, was, and we had this chat before the podcast, and I'm going to absolutely butcher his name, but Kaike from Almeria. There we go. I'm getting better, by the way. But see Kaike appeals for so many reasons. One, he's young. If you can partner somebody young beside Robin Cropper, who was brought in to be, the experienced head, former leader at FC20, you have that balance between young and old, the kind of experienced head and the young guy that's going to learn from him. Ideal. Kaique, when he signed for Almeria, was tipped to be Brazil's next big thing at centre back, and we're seeing Jefte, who's not tipped to be Brazil's next big thing, being really effective.
Yeah.
The thing about there's kind of two sides to Kaique. One is Almeria just got relegated, so I imagine he wants a move. But two, I imagine he is a guy that will go for big money. The offer on the table that apparently was rejected was 750,000 loan up front, with 7 million obligation to buy at the end, with a 30% selling clause.
Yeah.
Given we didn't get Champions League football, given we didn't, we weren't able to go and sign Sima, who I believe we were in deep discussions with for a long time whilst he was still here, It makes me think that one's unrealistic. And I reckon if it's not him, we will sign a centre back, but we might need to just go down the list a wee bit. It's going to be a really, really interesting week because, up to this point, there's been so many names circulated. Central midfield seems to be the one for me, both at number 6 and number 10, where there's been an abundance of names mentioned throughout the summer.
Yeah.
You've got Juan Jordan, Kenny McLean, Hannibal Mejri at Man United, Lennon Miller, Van Ginkel, Davy Klassen, Ousmane Targalini, Sheikh Niasse at Young Boys, Stuart Armstrong, Damian Garcia, Gustavo Puerto, and then the latest one is Martin Neto at Benfica. It is very clear, given all those names, that we are in the market for a centre mid. What will be interesting come the end of the window is whether that is a 6 and a 10. Mm-hmm. And in my opinion, personally, I think you need both. I mentioned on Sportsound that Tom Lawrence had a good game yesterday, but I think the reason Tom Lawrence had a good game is because it's Ross County. Mm-hmm. He will suit certain games. We had 75% possession yesterday. Tom Lawrence is not a guy who's effective out of possession. He doesn't do a lot of pressing. That's what you're going to need for Celtic Park, by the way. You're going to need someone who's covering a lot of ground, out of the ball. Tom Lawrence is very effective when he's got possession, so he's going to suit games like Ross County. We need somebody who, as you said, Scott, somebody who can give you that goal threat at number 10, but can kind of come a wee bit deeper. And I think that's why we're trying Diomande at the number 10 a couple of times this season alone to see if he can give that. And he's a wee bit lost. I think you miss a wee bit of his skill set. Yeah. But it'll be interesting to see what happens this week, particularly at number 10.
I completely forgot about Hannibal at Manchester United. He would be a fantastic signing. And of course, with that signing comes money and expectation the minute he rocks up. It'd be a bit of a statement of intent, I think, if you were to go and bring in someone like him, to be perfectly honest with you. We've not said hello to our sponsors yet tonight, and I cannot let us go into the next bit without we do that. Hi to Rhino Express, Clydeview Joinery, Athol Industrial Solutions, CSD Air Conditioning, Art of Gold, all looking after the podcast this season. Hugely grateful for that and their time and their assistance with us between now and May next year. Hopefully it's a successful season that we have in agreement with those guys. Dougie, I'll stick with you. Amidst transfer deadline week, if you like, small matter of the first Old Firm game of the season next Sunday, and so their place. Your thoughts, predictions and feelings right now going into next week.
I think the immediate feeling right now is I'm not as apprehensive about it as I was 24 hours ago.
Yeah.
Because the game yesterday, although it has all the context of it's only Ross County, you just get a better feel-good factor from it. I don't think there's any result, any game that we could have better prepared for next week. And one of the things I was going to touch on around Ross County before I touch on Celtic is there's a lot of comments going into the season from pre-season around what is Philippe Clement's system.
Yeah.
Hearts last season at home 5-0, Ross County 6-0. Those are the kind of games that nobody questions system, because when the players play to how the manager's asking them and they play, Jefte in particular, and that overlap with Matondo, they caused all sorts of problems with the pace, the intensity of the game. When you play like that, there's no discussions around, is the system working for us? And that's a good feeling going into next week, is that nobody's questioning the system, nobody's questioning the manager, nobody's looking at Dessers, for example, thinking he can't lead the line. Actually, it's a discussion around who's best placed to play next week. So the starting 11 will be interesting. I don't think there'll be too many changes to how we lined up yesterday. I think a lot of the players that played yesterday will be with an eye on next week. So that Sterling-Barron partnership, as I touched on earlier on. Centre back is going to be one that's interesting.
Yeah.
I reckon Proper will come in for Balogun. He was our marquee summer centre back signing, so to speak, and he was only unavailable because he picked up an injury.
Yeah,
he must start.
Yeah.
I think Matondo and Sheryl will start up with Dessers, because you get pace, you get we touched on the link up between the players. You're starting to build those relationships. It'd be silly of us to break up those relationships. I think the only other change that you might see is Tom Lawrence come out of the team. For everything I've spoken about already around, he just doesn't give enough out of possession. And I think what you'll see is Diamande come in, and you'll have a more flat three. I've seen somebody earlier on touch on the fact that when Diamande played for Midfield, he was in a flat three, and the left-hand side of it as an 8. I think that's what you might see, is you might just see him a wee bit deeper with Barron or Sterling sitting. And I think, it's not a brilliant team right now. I think there absolutely needs to be enhancements to this squad in this next week. I don't know if we were to sign somebody, between now and the weekend, they would come in and start.
Yeah.
So I think you're probably looking at that midfield three. But why can we not go to Celtic Park and get something? We are a good side. We have the opportunity, as I touched on Sportstown yesterday. We have a huge opportunity to change the narrative coming to Celtic Park. Everyone's all talked about Rangers aren't looking that great. Celtic are going to steamroll the season. But here we are going into Celtic Park, and we've got a really big opportunity to change that narrative. I think the only downside for me, and I'll just touch on this very briefly, is Celtic are in great form. I don't like talking about our opponents in too much detail, but Celtic have carried on a really good pre-season into the season. They look right up for it right now. And I think the biggest difference about us and them right now is they have a very solid team right now. They haven't made too many changes from last summer. They haven't had a lot of injuries to compete and to contend with as well. So they've got a real consistency from last season, a full pre-season, same squad, no injuries. They're hitting the ground running. Clement has said, and I completely support him, 1, we're going to need patience, and 2, we're not going to see the best of this team until October and November. Yeah. And that's because a lot of these guys are going to need time to get up to speed. So the only concern for me is it too soon? But let's go there with a bit of confidence, see what we can do. And I think anything next weekend is a big result for us that sets us up for a really interesting period towards the rest of the year.
Sheryl, 2 things for you. Roddy Wiley jumps in, and this is a really good point. We spoke about Conor Barron last week at length. I think it was good again yesterday. Dougie speaks about changing the narrative, players taking opportunities. Conor, it's a huge opportunity for Conor Barron to really stamp and cement himself into this Rangers team right now, and to go to Celtic Park and maybe try and dictate things and be in and around it. It is a huge challenge for him. But I think based on what we've seen so far, he's more than capable of going there and doing that next weekend. Absolutely.
He's in, Scott. He's already in. He's already cemented. Do you know, he could be our man of the match in all the games that we've played so far, maybe not withstanding Kiev. I think the one person that will not think it's a huge challenge for him will be Conor Barron. I don't think it will faze him. From what we've seen so far, I do not think it will faze him at all. He knows he's played Celtic several times. He knows what it's like to go to Parkhead. I don't think he'll be fazed by that at all. I worry something that Dougie touched on is this patience. And that was really easy to have after yesterday. It was almost like, right, okay, we can see what he's doing. We can see what Clement's trying. It's kind of making sense to me now, because when he initially said, you're not going to see the best of the team till October, we were all right. But then the first few games, they weren't great. And it was, there was a wee bit of concern around the manager and his judgment. Yesterday, that was much easier to see what he's trying to do. I worry, however, if it goes badly wrong next weekend, where does that sort of patience and that understanding go? But again, you know, Clement knows what he's doing. He's on his journey. I think we need to get behind him. I'm interested to see Dessers under pressure. Do you know, he absolutely produced yesterday. That was his best all-round performance in terms of assisting and linking up the play, etc. I would be very, very interested to see if he's able now to sort of translate that into a really high pressure environment. Thinking of his first goal yesterday, traditionally he's needed a wee bit of time. There's been a lot of shots where he's just wanted that extra few seconds and not got it. But yesterday, that first goal, you know, he was under pressure, the defender was coming in and he took it, you know, it was excellent. So I'm really, really interested to see how that translates to next Sunday. And if he's able to carry that progress on in that really high pressure situation where he's not going to get any time on the ball.
Yeah, I'm with you as well. I think next week, and someone head keeper says in the chat, and I think this is quite fair, when these Old Firm games often come up against sort of duels, right winger against the left back, left winger against the right back, and I think Czerny maybe in and around the boy scales will be quite interesting. I think he is potentially the weak link. There has to be a weak link there somewhere, Dougie. There has to be somewhere for us to get at them and give them something to think about, as opposed to being too concerned about what they're going to do to us in their own backyard.
Absolutely, Scott. At any level in football, it's around how you win your battles. You know, it's the first thing that a manager says is go out and win your battle, pick your man and you know, win that battle. That's the positive side of it. You've got Czerny up against Scales is a battle that he needs to win, and I think Czerny's really beginning to show his ability right now. You know, he didn't assist, he didn't score yesterday. Did he assist actually? Did he assist? Well, he did assist for Daniels, didn't he? No, it was Matondo's fifth. It was the fifth one he assisted for. So good that he is assisting. I thought the whole game he looked good because when you've got players in certain positions, it allows you to have that out ball, and I think Czerny gave a great out ball in the game yesterday. So I was really impressed with Czerny. I think the battle that's going to be really key is, well, I think there's two battles that are really key as well. So one is midfield. I think the midfield battle will dictate the game. Celtic's midfield have had far too much time. Guys like Callum McGregor, when Cantwell was meant to be on him, and we've kind of let him go and dictate play. We need to win that midfield battle. With Connor Barron, he got man of the match last season for Aberdeen against Celtic. I'm hoping that he goes in and wins that battle very, very quickly. But the other one, and there's so many comments about our captain, which is concerning, right? Nobody should be concerned about a Rangers captain ever playing against Celtic, but everybody seems to be. That is a huge battle between him and Maeda. James Tavernier needs to win that battle because that's where Old Firm games are won and lost. For me, is Daisa Maeda is a very, very good player. I think people give a bit of disrespect to Tav when he loses that battle sometimes, rather than praising Maeda. Maeda is their, you know, he is their player that makes them tick. He's the one that doesn't stop running. He's 100 mile an hour. He's fast. It's that pace that does concern me a little bit about Tav. Tav does seem to have slowed down a little bit in this past season. He looks a little bit unfit at times. I think there's huge context to be applied around Tav though. He had an operation in the summer. He was expecting to have a longer layoff to be able to recover from said operation, but Dujon Sterling picked up an injury that meant that James Tavernier had to be flung right in. So therefore, you're seeing a guy who's getting up to speed just now post-surgery. So I'm hoping that Tavernier has had these games to get himself up to speed. He was a lot better against Ross County. He played a different role in terms of that inversion into the centre at times. I don't think he'll be able to do that as much against Celtic at Celtic Park against Maeda. But as I said already, and how I'll finish it is he needs to win that battle.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I completely agree with you. Last bit, and I'm not going to ask you for a team prediction or a scoreline. Do you think we'll be happy next Sunday, Dougie, or do you think we'll be really sad, or will we be somewhere in the middle?
Well, we've always got to remember we're Rangers fans, so let's always be happy that we were born as Rangers fans. Win, lose or draw, right, we'll always be happy to have that. Will we be happy? Old Firm games are never judged on, you know, the outcome's never based on who's on form. You can't predict them going into them. Anything can happen. Clement has not won an Old Firm game. That is hanging over him right now. He needs to win it as much as Tav needs to win that battle against Maeda. Clermont needs to beat Celtic at some point.
Yeah.
Whether that's going to be the first game of the season at Celtic Park, when we've got a team still, finding their way, I'm not sure. I would be very, very happy with a draw at this moment in time. So in terms of if we're sitting here next week, if we come away with a draw, I'll be sitting with a smile on my face.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree. Sheryl, same to you. You'd be happy with a draw next weekend?
Do you know what? I think I would. A draw, get some players in before the window closes on Friday, and then progress on from there. Yeah, I would actually be delighted with a draw.
Yeah, no, I'm the same. That will wrap it for our second show of the season. Sheryl, great to have you back on. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Dookie, good to see you again, buddy. Thank you.
Could change my name to Jude Trump since he's a couple of years younger than me, but only in the condition that you change yours to Pat Nevin, because I'm not having it. I'm Pat Nevin.
Pat Nevin. I've been called many things, but I don't want to go there. Listen, good to have you both on. Before I let you both disappear at the Sunday night, I should say well done to the Rangers women team again today. A 9-0 thrashing at Lynx Park against Montrose. Special mention to Katie Wilkinson, her 4th game for the club, 3rd hat-trick. I did say to you about this girl last week. She will absolutely destroy many of the defences in the Women's League up here this year. Keep an eye on her. First goal for the club today, also for Northern Irish International, Laura Rafferty. So it's a good afternoon and a good weekend for all things Rangers, you have to say. As far as content is concerned, this week on the network, you have the guys back tomorrow night with the flagship, and as we move to the Europa League games, the second podcast of the week, your preview effectively for the weekend, will be out on your Friday night, and that is with the usual guys, Andrew and Shona and Kenny and Stevie. Please remember to check them out. If you aren't already following the podcast, please do it here on the YouTube channel. Like and subscribe and comment to everything we're doing. Let us know you're enjoying the content. Hopefully you are. And we will be back next Sunday for your third That Sunday show of the season from 9 p.m. Good luck to Rangers this week, whatever they do in the transfer market. And we'll be back hopefully happy and not sad next weekend. Bye for now.
Four Lads podcast is sponsored by Rhino Express, Cliveview Joinery, Athol Industrial Solutions Limited and CSD Air Conditioning, along with Art of Gold. Thank you for listening or watching the podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show.